Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty Gensius, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and a host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 4 members, 4 questions, and 4 answers for each question. Questions are generated by each squad member and run from the meaningful to the mindless. So let's find out who's on the episode with us this time.
Hi, everybody. Elliot Ingersoll, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
Hi, everyone. Eric Perry. I'm a clinical faculty at Southern New Hampshire University.
Hi, Stephanie Martyr, doctoral candidate at Kent State University, practicing counselor and co-host of Grad School Deconstructed.
We're missing a couple of squad members tonight. Jen is, I think, traveling and couldn't make it back in time to record. And Gina is away without leave. We expected her tonight, but she hasn't come in. So we're sure we'll see her next week. Elliot, you've got the first question.
All righty. Here, my question is, how attracted are you to the marginalia of counseling and or psychology? These are things like mythology, Jungian approaches, spirituality, spiritual maps, things like that.
I think for me, I kind of draw the line at what's an interest and what I use, right? So I think I definitely have a pretty high level of interest in things that might be more fringe, more kind of outside the box. And I think they do generate ideas for me clinically and even instructionally. But in terms of utility, that's where I kind of lean into. I'm getting to the point now where I'm more comfortable in my own approach and my way of doing things, that I'm starting to look outside the box for things that I feel like might interest or energize me. I did kind of a deep dive into Lacanian psychoanalysis a little while back and started reading through that again and thinking about object relations more, thinking about these different types of approaches that didn't really fit where I was clinically when I was practicing. So I think I'm stretching as far as that's concerned, but it's definitely traditionally for me been more of an interest than something I'd integrate into my work. I'm finding that to change little by little, though, as I start to progress in my career.
Yeah, I've always been attracted to the marginalia and, some of those more, fringe kind of concepts, perhaps, that are, thought about professionally. But I also think that there's a lot where maybe, as Eric was kind of saying, you wouldn't go whole hog approach, as a practicing counselor in one of these ways. But I do think that it really, looking at the stuff, it can open your mind to different ways of thinking and different perspectives and approaching situations and ideas in ways that you would not have thought about before. And it's unique, but it's also, there's some of it that speaks truths, even if you can't back it up empirically or, use it in that way. And I think sometimes it presents itself in counseling too. If you are working with a client and they bring up something that they subscribe to X, Y, and Z, or they have a feeling, you can just say, hey, it's not something that's necessarily research. It's not a huge lot of literature backing this up. It's just an idea that's out there, and you can kind of share it with them. Sometimes it might speak to them. Kind of with Eric on the, fully using that as a counseling approach, but I think that it can add some spice.
Well, to answer Elliot's question, I like it. I love it. I gotta have more of it. I really think we've lost touch with other ways of looking at mental health, and whether they're relevant or not now, they help us think about aspects of change and the human spirit. I'm not really interested in their utility for clients, and there's probably a more limited scope of things that I would do with clients, but more for me to kind of expand my worldview. And one of the classes I get to teach each fall that Stephanie has had to suffer her way through was advanced counseling theories. And you would think advanced counseling theories are going to take a deeper dive into the grade 8 or the Big 12 or whatever you want to call them. And we do that because in many cases, students haven't had a very deeper look at what else comes out of those theories and approaches. But we spend a good half of the semester going into more of the questionable ones. So things like autogenic training, brief psychodynamic therapy, dance movement therapy, encouragement therapy, Milton Erickson, which people really never hear about in a counseling program. But a great influence, fixed role therapy, liberation psychology, which is something now that is a large part of what we're looking, interpersonal process recall as an approach to work with clients, Morita therapy, Nican therapy, new identity process, radical psychiatry, which is also has the roots for a lot of what we're doing now, and thought field therapy and 24-hour therapy, the Brian Wilson therapy that happened with him. So we get to talk about them, and we get to talk about how those theories came about and what the influences were. And it kind of expands people thinking about, well, this is what people thought was really important in change, whether it was ethical or not. So, yeah, I love this stuff. I love to be on the edges. Not necessarily to use, but to kind of expand my own thinking about it.
Those are wonderful answers. I appreciate them. That's why I got into this in the first place. And it's really funny. So yeah, I'm on a research sabbatical now, and all I've read is mythology, James Frazer, Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, James Joyce. That's what I love. And, I have used it with clients in the sense of the mythological stories, the mythic kind of motifs. Yeah, when I would be doing therapy, sometimes I'd be like, this is a father-son motif, from maybe the Odyssey or some of the other myths. It was really what excited me in the first place. And I retired my psychology license after 25 years. I still have my counseling license, but I kind of feel psychology is pretty intellectually bankrupt. I don't feel the field in general has done a hell of a lot. And the really good stuff they keep missing and they pass up because you can't. It's like if you can't put it in an academic killing jar and watch it starve to death for lack of air and then examine it, well, then it's not worthwhile. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I made my point, whatever, with the license stuff, but I was like, yeah, I don't really see psychology going in a very good direction. And there's a whole other piece to that, which I won't get into here. Maybe we'll do it at another point. But yeah, I've just been immersed in mythology, theology, philosophy. That's where I'm happiest. I've tied it to teaching and to therapy, but I think like Marty, it keeps me very fresh, very alive, and understanding the waxing and waning of my own life, the existential ontological trajectories. I came out of darkness. I waxed to a point. I'm waning now, and I'm heading back to the darkness from which I came. And to be afraid of that is silly. It's like being afraid of deep, dreamless sleep. But that's what it's helped me with. So thank you for your answers.
Thanks, Elliot. I think I have the next one, and it's a pretty big shift. What summer food or foods will you miss over the fall or winter?
Every summer in August, I look forward to Greek Fest and all the wonderful Greek food. So I associate this Greek Fest food with summer, even though it's only one weekend throughout the summer. At the end of summer, it's just, I look forward to it. I get big boxes of all of the sweets and the baklava, and I take them home for the week. And all of, we'll get the gyros, and they didn't have calamari this year, but usually get that. It's just all of it is wonderful, and it's for a fleeting time. And now I have to wait all the way until next August.
For me, it's corn on the cob. And there's a history with that. Growing up when I was about 14, got hit in the mouth with a hockey stick and broke a tooth off right in the front. And it made it difficult for me to eat corn on the cob. In fact, on our trips to Wisconsin, where we would get the farmer dozen, which is 13 ears, Mom would come back to the cottage and boil them up and then painstakingly slice off rows of, slicing down the corn because I couldn't eat corn on the cob. I love the corn. Now that all denture stuff has been fixed, and I've got a bridge in there and things like that, I've this summer really fell in love with corn on the cob. Now, what's made it even better is spray on butter. I hate to say it, because when you had regular, that you'd put on it, you kind of had to balance it on a hot knife. Well, a knife that was getting hot because it was the corn on the cob that was hot. And you had, you had to kind of smoothly get that. Now you just take that spray on butter. I can't believe it's not butter. You spray it on, throw a little salt on it, do the section, and then you turn it and go back to the next process. So, yeah, there are purists who just eat corn on the cob without salt and butter. I appreciate that. But in our family, it was salt and butter on top of the sweet corn.
Yeah, I think for me, salads with garden fresh vegetables in August, especially barbecuing. And when I barbecue, I have a deep fryer and I end up making French fries. So those smells all kind of go together for me. And then I think the first kind of crisp sip of cold white wine on a sizzling evening, love that. I miss that in the fall, but I'll switch to red wine in the fall. So,
this question came out of a conversation I was having the other day. My son's getting into grilling and cooking outside. He just likes to be outside and cook. He's fascinated by it. So we got this Blackstone griddle. I don't know if anybody has one or has tried one. It's just a different way of cooking. So it's an outdoor griddle. And I like to do like stir fries and, the real thin smash burgers and different things on it. And we're talking about it. And he's like, I'm going to miss this in the fall and in the winter. And the nice thing about the griddle is you can pull it into the garage. It's not like the grill. There's no smoke. It's just a griddle like you might have in the house. So I'm like, we can still keep doing this. We can still use the griddle in the garage and go out and make the same kinds of things. And, I actually kind of look forward to winter foods. I look forward to changing and things being different. One thing that we'll miss in this house, though, that's been kind of a summer staple is watermelon. And watermelon for us has taken on a kind of whole new meaning in this house because there's so many different preparations of it. The newest one has been with crumbled feta cheese and balsamic vinegar, which my daughter cannot get enough of. She'll go through a watermelon in 2 days. So those are things that I'm going to miss, but I kind of look forward to the change. I don't know if I've admitted it here or not, but it feels like a safe space. I'm a huge pumpkin spice fan, so I am ready for that.
Okay, so here's another question. Does assembling your workspace, like a desk or your office, does that count as moving scholarship forward?
Well, I'm sort of a power worker, which means I have to have the space around me. I'll do everything to have the space around me in a way that I need to have it. So there's this kind of feng shui that I do prior to sitting down and getting a project going. And that includes having the right files on my desktop in the computer or on, a particular screen, the wrong files off. So I'll clear my screen in order to just have what I need in the workspace. So it's not assembling desks anymore, but for me, it's that scholarly feng shui that I do that really is not work, but it gets me to the point where I do work because there's nothing else for me to procrastinate with. So yeah, that's a yes and no question. Yes and no answer, I guess. But Jen's not here, so I can take up the slack and give a yes and no answer.
This one, yeah, this caught me a couple different ways, Stephanie, because I was like, I'm not sure our scholarship moved. That's the other thing. I've really been struggling with this, and I understand everyone's got to get tenure. They got to publish stuff. I haven't rocked the earth with the stuff I've published. I understand, you got to move through the motions, but I was like, our scholarship seems a bit of a whale kind of beached and botched by postmodern ponderings. That's, again, another topic for another time. But to my extent, assembling my workspace, cleaning, clears my mind, and that definitely helps my writing. My son and I, he's at university now, but, we would usually share this third floor. And one day he was like, he's got this deep voice. He's like, Dad, this is a real pigsty. We can't work here. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. We spent like 2 days just mass cleaning up, getting rid of junk. And yeah, we both worked a lot better. So I think that's a very important part of my ritual.
Yeah, I'm a fan. And, what it got me thinking about was like transitions and changes. So I've always found that, on a small scale, but even on a big scale, like I need things to signal transition and change. And that's even in my environment. So I always get this like compelling urge when I'm doing something different, I'm trying something new, moving positions, whatever the case may be, to change my surroundings. And it's interesting because I've been working remotely in large part for the last 5 or 6 years. So even now, all those changes happen at home, right? So my home office has to change. It has to reflect whatever it is I'm doing. So I've used those things to kind of mark changes and signify that I'm doing something different or shifting. And like Marty, I'll do that in smaller ways digitally. I'll move things away and out that I don't need to see or need to be in the periphery while I'm working on something else. And I need to set up for each task. So that really does help.
Well, I like these answers too, because it actually is more along the lines of what I was hoping might come out a little bit. And I didn't get a chorus of no's. So this question came about because working on dissertation, I got an accountability buddy through, and we were doing like the writing challenges together. And then we just started texting each other how many minutes of writing we were doing per day. And the definition given to what would count was anything that moved scholarship forward. So when we were doing this, I got a whole new desk and I needed my space because my office had never been set up because it was just storage basically before. I was like, I need to have the right space to really work through dissertation if I'm going to be doing this right. And it took maybe about 3 weeks because it's a huge L-shaped desk and it has a standing desk option to it as well for where the monitors are. But, I figure that it would count at least as half time. Maybe it won't count as like, I won't give myself full writing credit kind of time, but I'll cut it in half because it is necessary. And I really didn't feel like I was going to be as productive as I could be without having the right space set up and the right kind of furniture to have that done.
What do you do with that data? That's my question. I did this amount this time. I did that amount that time. You won today. I didn't win today. What does that data do for you? That's the same thing. I've got an Apple Watch and they tell me all the wonderful data that I can get from my Apple Watch, but it's like, what do I do with it? Well, you'll be able to find out, how well you sleep. I know how well I sleep. Just ask me in the morning. I'll tell you how well I slept. So I don't know, Stephanie, what did you do with the data?
It was just for encouragement. It was just, we were in it together. Support. It was never a competition either. So.
Okay. We'll take that as an answer. My question comes from, this is the point of year where we start to think about professional development activities. And maybe we've been thrown into some professional development activities in our past that we didn't care for, or ones that we thought were really unique and cared for. So what is the most unique, it could be the worst, professional development activity that you were ever a part of?
I got to own this one because it was one that I gave with a colleague. When we were doctoral students, we had these, they were probably delusions at the time. We thought they were insights about supervision and some of the stories from mythology. And this kind of ties back into my answer to my question. We were so excited. I'd never met anyone who saw the same correlations I saw. So of course we're thinking, well, everyone's going to see them. Everyone's going to love them. It's going to be groundbreaking. Oh, people hated it. Whoa. I think half the people walked out. It was a CE pre-conference workshop. About half walked out, hour and a half in. And we thought, well, no, we'll soldier through. And then, at the end, we read the evals and I looked at my colleague and he's like, yeah, I guess that wasn't such a hot idea. And I'm like, oh, it was a horrible idea. Isn't it amazing? We had no clue. And then it was like good learning experience, painful, not as painful as getting like dumped at a dance, but it was painful, but a good lesson.
I'll admit I've been a part of and participated in some pretty atrocious and unique professional development experiences, but I'm going to rewind quite a bit for this one. It was actually an activity that was suggested and put together by a supervisor of mine while I was working for a government agency. they decided that they wanted to do a scavenger hunt around the office and the different places that we work. Now, keep in mind the facility I was in was segmented into different places that you could only access based on your security clearance. So you had a code that you would pin in the door so that you could enter. My wife and I both worked there at the time, and the running joke was always that I would pin into somewhere she couldn't get into because she was human resources and I was doing investigations. So we'd have a conversation. I would hear something I didn't like and duck into a door she couldn't enter. And we always thought it was funny. So the scavenger hunt gets put together, and we're going to go seek out all of these things. And there's a prize at the end of it, right? And it's a monetary prize. They let us know it was going to be a monetary prize. So nothing motivates like money, right? So we all get out, and I'm going full force. Get to the last two items on this scavenger hunt, and some of them are innocuous. They're like, find the purple stapler, there's just, where's my swing line? Get through and get to these last two things. And I know the last two things are behind a door that I'm not allowed to enter. So I'm kind of standing at the door with a colleague of mine wondering what I should do. Is this worth whatever monetary prize that they have set aside for us? So we come up with this clandestine idea. We're going to find somebody with the appropriate clearance to go in, to get the items, to bring it out, and we're going to split the prize money. Right. So we managed to wrangle somebody as they're coming out the door, explain the whole thing to them. They give us the whole, wink, I got you covered. Run back in, grab this stuff. We'd spent 3 hours on the scavenger hunt at this point to run back full sprint to my supervisor and drop this thing off. Fantastic. And he was elated. So excited that we got excited to do it. My colleague and I were closer and better friends for it. And we got $5 at Burger King for our trouble. If that wasn't enough, I'll add this kind of additional point. We were on a production-based system for work, meaning you had to do so much before you left for the day. That quota did not change. So I stayed an extra 3 hours to finish my quota for the day and got myself a Whopper and a large Coke on the way home.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. And I gotta pause for 1 second and ask a question, Eric. Like, listeners know I have an ADHD brain. I've already figured out Marty's t-shirt. Steph, I got your t-shirt, but Eric has a thing on his chair that says secret lab. And I'm like, what in the world is the secret lab? What is that? Is he Android? What is it?
It's just a brand. It's just a brand. They make high back chairs for gamers and primarily for big folks. So for me, it's big enough to hold me up and comfortable enough for me to sit in all day.
Well, I'd never heard of it, so it was a secret from me. So thank you. Okay.
Yeah, highly recommend, Elliot.
I'm having a hard time with this, and I'm worried that also means that it was my professional development activity that I was administering. Because I feel like if you're in a room and you're looking around and you can't point to the messed up professional development activity, then it's probably yours. So, but at the same time, there's nothing that stands out that was like so bad. I think there's probably times I know I could have done better. I also know there were definitely things I did attend that I thought was a waste of time or not helpful at all, but not very often. Because the more I thought about certain things I was attending, I'm like, no, that was okay. So sorry that I don't have anything like super juicy, but I will say that one of the biggest wastes of time is like if you start working at, you have a new employer and it's a big one, like a hospital or something, and you have to have a week of introductory stuff to all the HR things. And you just sit there for a week and your mind just starts to like ooze out your ears because you just want to start working. That not quite professional development, but kind of tied to that, I suppose. Those are all pretty awful to suffer through.
Those are all great answers. This question, I think, just again, because we're facing that season of professional development. I see a lot of those things coming up on websites and such. But I had to, I put this as the most unique or worst. And for me, the most unique was I have to dig back a few years here. The boss in this practice that we were in, and there were 6 of us in the practice, said, we're going to go out and do a workshop. And it's going to be an all-day workshop. Wear comfortable clothes, and it should be interesting. And it was holotrophic breath work. And, that was dropped on us in a way. And Elliot, talk about what holotropic breath work is in a sentence or two.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Holotropic breath work was devised by Christina and Stanislav Grof, who had been doing Stanislav Grof had done LSD psychotherapy, and they figured out a way to induce the non-ordinary states without any chemicals, but with a rapid method of breathing and evocative music. And it's quite an experience. It's not something you drop on one. That's
Yeah. Well, we all went. And when I started quickly to figure out what was going on, I said, some of us sat in the morning, or some of us worked in the morning, and some of us worked in the afternoon, and we were sitters for whoever was doing the work. So I said, I'll do my work in the afternoon because I want to watch this before and when I saw my boss rolling around on the floor and screaming, I figured, okay, this might be the kind of ego thing that I needed. I actually got into it and wound up going back for more sessions. And I don't know, maybe I've done 6 experiences in it over the period of my life. But it goes back to, and Elliot's wiping tears from his eyes because he's laughing so much. You can't see this, but I'm narrating that for you. It goes back to Elliot's question about the marginalia in psychology and counseling. And so, yeah, it was a hell of a day. And after you do it, you draw your images and you're similar to Mandela's. It was a wild professional development experience.
I got to say, unadvised and bold as it was, I give credit to your boss if they chose that. I'm like, well, there's happening there.
He was like very much, he sat in a hot tub with Carl Rogers. He's the godfather of my child. He's very, very makes you feel safe. So it was sort of like, okay, we'll do this experience. I think it'll be cool. So that's it for all of our formal questions, but I've got one last question, which is the final shot question. Live in LA or New York?
New York, hands down.
Yeah, New York. That's an easy one.
Yeah, I was going to say New York.
Wow, we have no LA takers here tonight. I was going to say New York. I've never been to New York. That's the interesting piece about it. In all my years and all my travels, I've never gone to New York City, but went to LA one time. We were there at a conference in Anaheim, and a colleague said, "Hey, I rented a convertible. Let's go drive up to LA." So we spent the day skipping the conference and driving around to LA in a convertible, which was really pretty cool. But for me, it's New York. It's the all that's there, the diversity that's there, the food that's there, the change in seasons that's there. So that's our final shot question for tonight. Thanks to the squad, Stephanie, Elliot, and Eric. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts. Thepodtalk.net is where you can find them. You can find out more about the squad by going to circularfiringsquad.net. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Chet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.